Mr. Palermo is a constituent of mine, good friend of mine, and welcome. Would you identify yourself for the record?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rock Palermo, South Louisiana. Practice law in Lake Charles. My firm represents charter schools in the area, and one of their big concerns, of course, is not just the school having connectivity, it's a two-way street because of, as plenty of people have mentioned, that student's going to have to be virtual perhaps come September 28th, and the lowest common denominator is what needs to be lit up, and that last mile, and it needs to be lit up. And so, especially in the poor communities, we need to make sure that Suddenlink, Altice gets there and gets that full line powered up all the way to that last mile. And when the legislature or local governing authority gives a franchise agreement, I know the legislature doesn't, but when a city gives a franchise agreement, they need to make sure that there's protections in place so that when they do have an emergency like this, there are bonds that can be put up perhaps so that when they fail to come to the rescue 3 days after the storm, 5 days after the storm, 20 days after the storm, somebody can take that bond and go get another entity such as a Cox Cable, a Cameron Communications, a Xfinity, another provider to come do what they're not doing. As you see in all these instances, it's a energy. You rarely see an energy truck. You see every other truck that energy has pre-planned to come in to do these things after an emergency. That's planning. That's execution. Because they can have all the plans they want to on the books, and they can present them to you. If they don't have a mechanism in place to execute it, it's silly. It's just paper. So when the franchise agreement is set up, you need to make sure that they have the protections in place to deliver it. If they can't deliver it, their bond is sacrificed, and then whether it's GOSEP or the city or parish can then execute on it and then have their own backup plan, their own plan B or plan C to have those other entities come in and come to the rescue. They went to contractors as employees. You heard that testimony earlier. If that's the case, it should be very easy for them to call up contractors from outside the area. This isn't, most of these lines, just like energy, you don't have to be a Borgard Electric person to light up Borgard Electric. You can be from California. It's all the same stuff. And so we shouldn't rely on just one entity. We should rely on the whole network of, as has been mentioned, the lifeline of telecommunications. And those providers exist, and for money, they'll come. The key is getting the protection, which bond, for lack of a better phrase, up front so that they know if they don't provide it, then whether that bond's $1 million or however much it takes to get the services back lit up, you can. So one of the things I heard, which saddened me the most, was that this was a Cat 4 hurricane, like they never heard of a Cat 4 hurricane. We had Harvey, we have Ike, Charlie, Michael. I could go on Cat 4 hurricanes. We knew this season, and almost every season they say is going to be bigger than the last, but clearly no preparation in terms of having a plan for this devastation and executing it on what is a lifeline and essential service, especially in times on the heels of COVID, where we know schools and other medical care is being done virtually. So this is one time where a company who's buying other companies and for millions or hundreds of millions of dollars can certainly set aside money to have a plan B, C, D, and E, and F that would have solved this. Unfortunately, citizens in our area, one of the Stein gentlemen who operates Stein's in Lake Charles, Iowa, and Sulphur, they don't have phone lines because of Suddenlink being down. He actually on Facebook said, call or text me, and had a picture for people who want, after the storm, be able to know if you have chainsaws in stock, do you have different types of materials. unfortunately, in 2021, that's what we're having to rely on in order to restore a service that, you know, when they do these franchise agreements, they come into your town, and like Sulphur, you know, when they first come in, they got offices in Lake Charles, they got Sulphur, DeRidder. The longer they stay, those things start getting cut back. When they come in, have in place the agreement where they can't shut an office down or they sacrifice a bond. Have penalties for each and every service they provide, and when they don't provide the service, they have to pay a penalty. The legislature could do that. I think Mr. White talked about bundling, that y'all gave them that ability to do it. When you give them these things that they can do, these rights, much is to be expected with that. So put penalties in place when they don't deliver. It's that simple. We do it. You do it in other industries, the oil and gas industry. You make oil and gas companies put up money so that when a well is orphaned, it gets cleaned up eventually. This is more essential than any of that commerce. So please hold them to it. And I'm not sure. I mean, it's a preparation issue. It's an execution issue. And as the sign on the church says, if money can solve it, it's not a problem. Money could have solved this if they would have set it aside and had a plan to execute and deliver these services back to our area. And I mentioned the charter schools again, and education is one of the big parts of this that is very sad, because McNeese, our public schools, our Catholic schools, our Episcopal schools, they all rely on this internet service in terms of maybe not the school, but if the student can't get online with the teacher, there's been a failure. And not once today did I hear an apology and just say, we failed. When I heard 70%, I about fell out of my seat, because yeah, you could, depending on how big the pool is, you can always say 90% or whatever. Total failure in Calcasieu Parish in terms of delivering service. And I would think that they would have sent somebody to, if they didn't send the CEO, they would have sent somebody to simply apologize to the community and say, we're going to do whatever it takes to get everybody lit up before school starts. Last thing is, I don't know what your rules are, Mr. Chairman, but when that CEO comes to Lake Charles, if your rules allow for a subcommittee to be housed at the police jury and have his testimony under oath, I think that would be a nice suggestion. So,
Mr. Palermo, we may have to call out the National Guard if that was
but
to be the
they're
case.
there, so he could be protected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Palermo, thank you. And Rock, I want to thank you publicly for your service. Every time there's a catastrophe in Calcasieu Parish, you're one of the first ones that's there, helping out, donating your time. I know you got a law practice, but you spend sometimes I wonder when you practice law, because I see you out there helping out our community so much. So thank you very much for that.